guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and I want to start out by saying something that I don't normally say, but this is a time of year where a lot of pressures from life can build up and be very difficult for people. So if you're feeling some extra stress, we are in the post-holiday letdown season. We are dealing with lockdowns and coronavirus, and we can't see our loved ones and all kinds of things like that. So I just want to say we can't really avoid stress, but we can find healthy ways to manage it. And if you need some help with that, go ahead and reach out to me, reach out to a friend, neighbor, family member, whatever the case may be. Just don't continue with unhealthy habits until you reach the point of getting in trouble. All right, that's all I want to say. Thank you for putting up with that. Back to the video. I hope this video provides a little bit of a stress relief and a bit of fun and entertainment. Certainly making it does that for me. It's a nice way for me to take a break from my day and talk about something I enjoy. And so let's go ahead and get into these two knives. So we have here the Real Steel Akuma, Ivan Bregnitz design, and over here we have the RAT Model 1, and RAT stands for Randall Adventure Training. So that's where this design has originated as well, and it's of course, you know, through the whole Ontario. There's a whole bunch of RAT knives with Ontario. Since that time, they've moved on to SC and they're doing different things. But anyway, very, very comparable knives in my opinion, despite the fact that there's a bit of a price discrepancy, although that price discrepancy isn't that big with this particular model. So this is the carbon fiber, and in this model, these things are like around 70 bucks these days. Well, this is only 77. Now, I will say, yeah, get the FRN version. It's like 50 bucks. It's $39, I think, something like that. But if you're looking at the carbon fiber anyway, these could be really compelling. And the other cool thing about this little discussion is it gives me an opportunity to address some of the extras, because the Akuma does something a little different. It's got some cool features going on. And this comparison kind of allows us to ask the question if these cool, interesting features make it a vastly superior knife, or perhaps is just the simple practicality of the RAT Model 1 more than enough. All right, of course, in a perfect world, anyone who's watching this channel, probably it's not out of the question for you to own both. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this, and we'll work through a number of different features. I'll kind of tell you, to me, which one stands out as we compare these two, and then at the end, I'll try to wrap up in some meaningful way, despite the fact that, honestly, guys, if you were to say I have to throw one of these in the garbage or get rid of it and I could only keep one of the two, I'd have a really hard time deciding which one. Hopefully, as I talk with you about this, I'll come to a conclusion myself. So, RAT Model 1, 8.5 inches overall, 3 5/8 on the blade, 5 inches of handle, 3 3/4 inch grip area, and 5.3 ounces. Now, the grip area, and then I should point out that there is this kind of flat area that I have used and is usable as a choil. So that needs to be brought up just as we kind of talk about the grip here. Moving down to the Akuma, very similar size, all around 8.5, just over 8.5 inches, pretty much exactly the same as the RAT Model 1. 3 11/16 on the blade, so that is a little bit longer. 4 13/16 on the handle, which is really cool. So that's just over 4 3/4, so almost 1/4 of an inch smaller when closed. Let me just quickly show you that. And that's considerable when you're thinking about, so this is something you're going to carry in your pocket all day, every day. In terms of grip area, this guy takes a different approach. Okay, there's no big choil here, so this ends up giving us quite a bit at 4 3/8 grip area. And finally, the Akuma weighs in at only 4.1 ounces, which for a knife of this size at well over 5 inches, almost, this is pretty solidly 5 5/8. This one's very close to that as well. But 4.1 ounces is really, really nice for that size. All right. Now, in this category of carryability, what am I going to be more comfortable lugging around in my pocket all day? I think the Akuma is a pretty clear winner. It's more than an ounce lighter. The blade to handle ratio to me is just a little bit preferable. But now both of these, let me say, can accommodate even the largest of hands. I've never heard anyone complain that the Rat Model 1 doesn't have enough space, but the Akuma does have an interesting approach to that. All right. Okay, so size, weight, and carry, the Akuma takes the cake on that one. Let's move over to the blade. All right, Rat Model 1 is a very standard blade shape. We've got a drop point with a full flat grind, moderate edge here. So it's about 24 thousandths behind the edge. Over here, we've got thicker blade stock. This is a little over 1/8 of an inch. This is the Rat 1 is a little under 1/8 of an inch. The edge geometry on the Akuma is very impressive. It's only 16 thousandths behind the edge compared to the 24 thousandths on the Rat. Now, it's kind of a weird balancing act here, guys, because the thicker stock versus the thinner stock almost balances that out. To be honest, if you use both of these side by side, and I purposely went and just, cut some apples up and just purposely used these for doing a couple little tasks, they both slide through material about equally. One would be, if you were blindfolded, you'd be really, really hard pressed to definitively pick one and say it's substantially better. You really would. The blade steel D2 and K110, which is kind of a D2 equivalent, it's pretty tough to pick a solid winner on this. And so I've really got to call this a tie. Yes, they're different, but the differences almost cancel each other out. So I guess I'll leave it at this. For your own purposes, if you like thicker blade stock, you're probably going to like the Akuma better. If you like thinner blade stock, you'd like the Rat 1 better. However, then we've got to reverse those and point out that if you want it to be really thin behind the edge, then you have to favor the Akuma. If you want a little more material at the edge, then you favor the Rat Model 1. And you guys see what I mean there by saying the two of them kind of cancel each other out. They really, really do. And that's why I feel like I have to call it a tie. Let's talk about the action. The Rat Model 1 is famously good. It's smooth. It deploys quickly and easily. The thumb studs are very accessible and very comfortable. Phosphor bronze washers, stainless steel liner that's really, really nice and easy to get to. Now, it's not going to drop shut. I could probably adjust the pivot a little bit and get it to, but it's really not designed to do that. Very enjoyable knife, however, smooth and fast and fun. Now, when we move over to the Akuma, it's going to be a different ball of wax. It is on bearings, so it is very drop shut. We have a thumb stud. We have the flipper tab that is this really cool sort of flush flipper tab. All right, and finally we have the opening hole, which works well to roll the knife open or to spidey flick it. So lots of deployment options on this bearing pivot. The lock bar is really, really accessible. And in terms of first, in terms of just fidget factor alone, the Akuma is much, much nicer. If you're one of those guys who wants to sit on the couch and play with your knife, you're definitely going to gravitate to the Akuma. It's got a million different options. It's very smooth. It's very fast. Of course, the bearings versus phosphor bronze washers discussion is one we've had lots of times on the channel. I tend to just marginally prefer phosphor bronze washers, but frankly, over the years, I've had a ton of knives with bearing pivot, and I've used those in all kinds of circumstances and can honestly say that I've never felt like, oh man, because of these bearings, I've got to take the knife apart and clean it, or I've got problems, right? So normally the argument is, well, phosphor bronze is better for hard use because if dirt and grime and stuff gets in there. The fact is, if you've used any folding knife in a really dusty, dirty environment, it sucks, right? I've had phosphor bronze washer knives and I've had bearing knives that because I had them in my pocket while I was doing drywall or concrete or something like that, I've had to take them apart and clean them. Either one is not ideal, and either one will continue to function even when there's quite a bit of dirt and grime in there. So for fidget factor, you clearly have to go with the Akuma. For simplicity and that there is something I appreciate, guys, about getting good action with phosphor bronze, because it means you've got to have reasonably good tolerances. You got to put a knife together pretty well. And so if it's the simple functionality that you like, then the Rat 1 takes the cake. If it's the fidget factor you like, then the Akuma is clearly the way to go. Let's move on over to the handle. And again, if I had to pick one as the winner, I'm going to pick the Akuma, because I do tend to be one of those guys that flicks their knife open and closed while I'm, cooking or watching TV or playing video games or whatever. Let's move back over to the handle construction. Now, there's two things I have to point out here. One, we've got G10 versus carbon fiber over G10. The Rat, of course, is going to be widely available in the FRN instead of this, and that's going to be a little bit different. And the FRN version is actually a little grippier. However, the Rat, it doesn't matter so much, because I find the shape of the handle really, really locks you in with the Rat Model 1. We all know stainless steel liners. We already mentioned the phosphor bronze washers. It's going to be standoff construction, lanyard hole, bent pocket clip. All right, so in terms of how this is constructed, very, very common methods of construction here. And in terms of ergonomics, it feels really, really good in hand. And it does, with that deep choil, really lock you in. There's a lot of confidence there when you have that thing in your hand. Moving over to the Akuma, there's a couple things here that I think are worth noticing. First, the G10 is nicely textured. You do get that pop of color, which is doing a similar job to the carbon fiber here, trying to dress things up a little bit. In hand, it's very comfortable as the Rat Model 1. Now, it doesn't have that same deep, aggressive choil, and so, it doesn't quite lock you in as much. However, the texture sort of does that job for you in place of the choil. The construction here, though, is the one thing that I want to note. Notice that the Akuma has a steel insert with the liner lock, which is fantastic and allows there to be no steel on the show side and really lightens up the whole package quite a bit. The other point to make here is full backspacer versus standoffs. So that does mean, if you had some forced air or something, you can get a little more access to the internals on the Rat Model 1. Oh, and the clip, I mentioned the vent clip, but there's a deep carry reversible clip here on the Akuma. So which would I go with? Well, they both feel really good. I have to say, on this particular front, I like the Rat just a little bit better. I like that it locks my hand into place. Both are equally comfortable. Ergonomically, in terms of just straight up comfort, it's really a tie. But where the Rat edges out the Akuma a little is that deep choil and then that jimping on the spine, so that when I grab the knife this way in a saber grip, I am really, really locked in. Not quite to the same extent. I'm confident here, and I can do lots of good stuff. I'm not worried that this is going to slip out of my hand or anything like that, but that choil combined with the thumb ramp and the jimping does give me a little more confidence. So I've got to give that one to the Rat Model 1. Overall, if I had to pick one, boy, guys, it's really, really tough. I wouldn't really want to give up either one of these, and I have no plans to give up either one of these. They're both useful. They're both practical. They both feel great in hand. The only real advantage I can give you for the Rat 1 is that you could, if you went with the FRN version, pick one of these up for $40. All right, and I guess there's a bunch of different colors. Here you're limited to black or green. With the Rat, they're like, especially the FRN versions, they're like a billion different colors. Billion might be a tad bit of an exaggeration. So the $40 price point is definitely considerable. However, if you're looking at this Rat Model 1 with the carbon fiber overlay, then you really need to consider the Akuma as well. I think in that, in this comparison, the Akuma fares really, really well. So yeah, you add that 30 bucks and it becomes substantial. Again, if you're looking, if you're on Blade HQ right now looking at this particular knife, you should really pull up the Akuma and look at them side by side. I would probably steer you toward buying a budget Rat 1 and then buying an Akuma as well, since you saved a little extra money on the Rat Model 1 and since you were going to buy 2 or 3 knives this month. Anyway, there you go, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to check out those channel sponsors. I do think Justin over at White Mountain Knives, I hope I'm not lying to you. I hope he still has some of these in stock. He probably doesn't, but they'll come back, okay? I promise. If you're watching this in 6 months, Justin probably has the Akumas back in stock. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll talk to you soon.